All right, you guys. So we're going to pick up where we left off from last Wednesday. So I have my inclusion awareness poster up, and we are still working with this file to kind of put the finishing touches on it. What we were exploring with this document last week were the principles of grouping within a composition. And in this particular case, we have a grouping of objects. We started out with a very similar kind of arrangement, but we just wanted to create a little bit more drama in this composition by moving the scooters farther away, the cluster of scooters down here in the lower right area of the composition window above the type, and then the upper scooter to create a little more distance between the two. And then we also, if you'll remember what the original file looked like, the subheader down here at the very bottom was originally up here in the corner. And so we ended up with 4 different groups of visual elements that were kind of competing for each other, which really kind of went against the message of the poster, inclusion awareness. And so we wanted to really push that idea by putting the type all together in one space, the bottom of the poster, create more drama between the scooters. And we were also exploring just some tips and tricks in Photoshop, and in particular, how to apply a drop shadow to a visual element, and then how to put that drop shadow on its very own layer so that you can actually interact with that drop shadow as a shape, as an object that can be distorted and manipulated. And so we actually got one manipulated up here in the upper corner. So we're going to go through those steps again with these scooters down here just to get some more practice. And then we're going to continue to explore this idea of the principles of grouping within a composition. In particular, we're going to explore the concept of discord and how you can use the idea of discord as a framework for how to place and group all of the visual elements. Today we're working with disconnect. So that's the message here, disconnect. So we see a disconnect between the scooter in the upper corner and the cluster of scooters down here in the lower corner. So back to the drop shadows. If you all are following along, you'll remember that we have a folder with all of the scooters already populated in there. And one of the scooters I've already converted, or I've already applied a drop shadow to, and put it on its own layer, which was this scooter up here. So now I'm trying to find one that doesn't have a drop shadow. So I'm going to work with this layer 4. If you're working with the same file, then it would be your layer 4 as well. We're going to go through the steps of applying a drop shadow to this shape, and then we're going to put that drop shadow on its own layer so that we can further manipulate it. So to put a drop shadow behind a visual element, you simply want to make sure that layer is selected. And down here at the bottom of your layers window, you have an effects button. And at the very bottom of that list that pops up, you'll see drop shadow. So I'm going to pull up the drop shadow. Now remember, the things that I was telling you last week, the things that need to happen before you put the drop shadow on its own layer. And that is, you need to go ahead and determine the appearance of the drop shadow in terms of not distance. I'm just moving the distance so I can see the drop shadow a little bit better. But things like spread, size of the shadow, and opacity. Because once we convert this to its own standalone layer, we won't be able to go back and change those properties about that shadow anymore. So we need to make sure that we have it appearing the way we want it to. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
So how did you get the you put the drop shadow on it, but you didn't put it on its own layer.
It's not on its own layer yet. We're not ready to do that just yet. We're very close though, or at least I am. So what we're doing right now with this layer style window open is we are just putting the settings in place for the appearance of the drop shadow, how you want it to look. So it's only when it's in this state that we have access to these properties that we can change.
I have a question. I don't see the effects bar at the bottom of my layers.
You don't?
The effects.
Okay, well let me come take a look.
Might stretch it.
So you don't see this down here?
It's not there.
Okay.
Yeah, because mine normally does that. That's why I'm confused.
Okay. So make sure you're in the right program. That happens to me all the time. Sometimes I'll be working in one program and I'm trying to do something and then I can't get it to work right, and then I realize I'm trying to do something that another program does. All right, so I've got my drop shadow looking the way I want it to, and so I'm going to hit OK. And so now you can see in the layers window we have an effect that's been applied to layer 4. And right now the way the drop shadow looks is it looks like the way it's positioned makes the scooter look like it's flying up against a wall, you know, or there's a wall behind it where that shadow is being projected. And we don't really want it to look like that. We want it to look like it's standing, you know, erect on the ground, and then the base of the shadow, or the shadow, is planted on the ground and is kind of skewed or distorted, elongated away from that scooter. So in order to be able to handle the shadow in that way, we'll need to put it on its own layer as just another pixelated visual element. So to do that, you want to select this layer that you have the shadow applied to, and then you'll go to Layer in the menu bar, and you're going to look for Layer Style. And you're going to choose, hold on a second. See, I've gotten myself all confused now. Because I can't see what I'm looking for. Oh, there it is. Thank
What is
you.
it called?
Create layer.
That's under layer style.
Yes. And you'll get this message that pops up. It's simply telling you that once you convert this shadow to a new layer, you won't have those editing abilities again. You won't be able to bring up the layer style window box and change things like the spread and the size and of the shadow. So just go ahead and click OK, because we know that that's what we want to do. And here is our layer shadow now, our shadow layer now. And so it will end up right beneath the object that you'd applied the shadow to. And so here's my layer shadow, or my shadow layer. And now I have this shadow object that I can pick up and move around and distort in a number of ways.
I don't know why it's not letting me move.
So one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this object in half so that I can move the handlebars freely from the base of the scooter. And a real easy way to do that is just select those pixels, maybe even using the lasso tool. That's what I'm going to use. And just select the pixels of the part of the shape that I want to manipulate. And I'm going to cut that and put it on its own layer. And the reason why I'm doing this is because if you think about, if you guys have taken basic drawing, you've probably had to draw a lot of objects that are lit with different types of lighting, and you have to think about things like shadows and the way light hits objects and the way it casts shadows. And so this is really no different. We're just manipulating these shadow shapes so that they describe the space better. So I'd like to stretch this one and then kind of elongate it. And so I have it selected. I'll go to Edit, Transform. And I'll use some of these transformation properties to
How did you cut
skew it.
Because I know it said cut, but it removed the whole thing.
So then I just pasted it back.
Oh.
So once you do Command X or Edit, Cut, it will disappear, and then you just create a new layer to paste that object onto. Yes, Kendrick.
The handlebar kind of cut in half with the lasso tool,
Mm-hmm.
and it did not, let me.
Did you have the layer selected, the new shadow layer?
Yeah.
Okay. I will come take a look.
Take a while to find the lasso tool. So I put it behind.
You're fine. And then I'm just going to scoot these shadows underneath and just place them just wherever they need to go. So in some places they need to overlap. The handlebars will need to overlap this scooter, at least the base of it. And I'm going to rotate it. So after I did the lasso tool,
Never mind.
I cut the shape from that layer. You can go to Edit, Cut, or you can do Command X if you're using your keyboard, if you're using a Mac keyboard.
And then what you do is
And then you'll paste it onto a new layer. Yes, create a new layer and paste it onto that layer. All right. So would y'all like to go through those steps again? Practice makes perfect. It's a good thing we have so many scooters to apply this to. Okay, so I'm going to go through this again. So as you can see, there's some slicing and dicing involved in this process as well. So there's some cutting, pasting, rearranging, maybe cutting and rearranging again. You just have to get comfortable with this idea of layers and how to manipulate these visual elements and get them into the form you need them to be in so you can work with them to create the kind of composition that you're trying to create. So I'm going to move on to this scooter here. So I've selected it. Now I'm ready to apply a drop shadow to it. So I'll go to the Effects button, choose Drop Shadow, and I don't really need to mess with any of these variables anymore of the properties, because it remembers what I had them set to the last time I applied a drop shadow. And since these are all objects that are supposed to be in the same space and being illuminated from the same light source, their shadows would also be the same as well. So all I need to do is just click OK and let it just go ahead and apply that drop shadow. And now I'm ready to put it on its own layer. So I'll make sure that layer is selected. I'll go to Layer in the menu bar at the top of the window, and I'm looking for Layer Style, and then I'll choose Create Layer. And I'll click OK, and now there's my layer shadow. Then I'll work on just positioning it where it needs to go. I'm going to slice and dice. I'm going to turn this one off just so I can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to cut the handlebars off using the lasso tool. So Command X to cut the handlebars. I'll create a new layer. And Command V to paste it back in. And then I'll want the handlebars to sit on top of the scooter. So I have part of its shadow behind it, because the scooter will overlap. And then the other part of the shadow will be kind of in front of it. And now I just need to move the handlebar shadow. And I'm just going to stretch that shadow just kind of right on out of the scene. And I'll move on to another scooter. So I'm doing this again. So I've selected another scooter. So we're going to go through the steps again. I'll apply a drop shadow. And I'll just click OK. And then I'll put the shadow on its own layer. So you'll want to select the layer that has the shadow applied to it. Go to Layer in the menu bar, Layer Style, and then Create Layer. Check OK. And there's my new shadow layer. Move this out of the way for just a second so I can get my lasso tool, cut off the handlebars. Put them on their own layer. So now I have a shadow that sits above and one that sits below the scooter. And then I'm using the transformation tools to distort it and elongate it to give it some drama. And I forgot to paste in my handlebars.
When I'm pasting these the handlebars back in, it's like making my
Dark.
shadow. Yeah.
Yeah, just lower the opacity. I'm not sure why it does that. I've noticed that too. It does paste it in at full opacity. So that's one property that doesn't carry over in the cut and paste process, but you can just reset it. I just kind of changed my mind about the direction these handlebars should be going in. I just noticed that the light is carrying all the handlebars, in this direction, but I had that one pointing in a different direction. So I went back and fixed it. So how's everybody doing with their drop shadows and putting shadows on their own layers? The elongating part? Okay. Well, let me talk more in depth about that then when I do this next scooter. So I'll really talk more about that process of transforming that shadow and stretching it. All right, so I'm going to do this scooter right here. This one should be challenging just because of the way it's faced. So this is layer 3, if anybody wants to follow along step by step. So I'm going to apply a drop shadow to this. And then click OK. And now I'm going to put it on its own layer. So with this layer selected, I'll go to Layer, Layer Style, and Create Layer. And now I want to put this layer on this shadow on its own layer. Or I already have, I'm sorry, I need to cut it up. So I'll get my lasso tool. Cut the handlebars. I'll create a new layer to put the shadow on. And I'm going to put that right above my scooter layer. So I have now the shadow that's going to be behind the scooter, and I've got the shadow that's going to be in front of the scooter. But I need to paste it in. So go to Edit Paste, and there's the handlebars. And when you paste the shadow back in, you'll notice that it's a lot darker. So if for some reason the opacity, just that property doesn't carry over in the cut and paste process. So you can just lower the opacity to where you think it matches the other shadow or what you think it needs to be. And now I'm ready to place them where they need to go. So this one will go right underneath this scooter. And I'm going to use the Edit Transform features. So there's Scale, Rotate. I like Skew a lot. I like Distort a lot, and Perspective. All three of these I find most useful to me when I'm manipulating these drop shadow forms. So Distort packs a lot of punch. I like it because you can scale things with it. But you can also, like you just saw, distort things too, really exaggerate things, perspectives with this feature. So like with the handlebars, bring that back in. And I need to lay these down to kind of move in the same direction as the rest of these scooters. So I'm going to rotate it while I have it in this free transform mode. And then in the distort mode, I can pull any of these corners and really exaggerate the angle of these shapes. So I have one more scooter that I'm going to apply drop shadow to. So I'll select that layer, go to the effects button, choose drop shadow, click OK. Now we'll put it on its own layer. So go to layer, layer style, create layer, click OK. And this one's going to be kind of challenging because it's such an odd shaped little scooter. All right. So how did everybody do with their drop shadows? You guys still working on them? I hear lots of little clicking going on around the room. I'll pause this and come around and check on everybody, and then we'll move forward. All right, you guys. So I just took a little break, saw what you guys have been creating in here in the classroom, and I think everybody has a good understanding of this process, at least to know how to put an effect on its own layer so that you have more control over its appearance, in particular its perspective. And so, just hope you remember these steps. If you ever need this later on down the road when you're working in Photoshop, now you know how to do that. We're going to move on to another file. We're going to move on to another portion of grouping. And we're going to be working with a file called Scooter Speedway Poster. So if you want to download that and open it up. And this is what your file will look like when you open it. So in this example, we see a poster advertisement for a scooter speedway park. And right now, the design lacks the visual excitement that would come to mind when you think about a place like this. The static placement of the scooter. And what I mean by static is it lacks energy. I mean, it is sitting at a diagonal, which we haven't really talked about things like, directions that things point. But when when you put something at a diagonal, it does kind of imply a little more movement in the composition, but it still falls pretty flat. So even though it's tilted, it's not doing the job that it needs to do. It lacks the visual qualities that convey the ideas of excitement and energy. The type also is boring and static. It's clearly a tidy presentation, but not the best solution for this project. It gets the job done, but it's all just kind of lackluster. So in this example, using an intentionally chaotic layout would serve the message of this piece more effectively. So right now we have everything just kind of, line by line, all the information's there, it gets the job done, but it doesn't really convey the excitement and the energy that you would expect at a place like this. So what we want to do is we want to use this idea of movement and energy and chaos as our grid framework or our wireframe for how we're going to place these visual elements. It's going to require us to do some warping of the type. We're going to add some drop shadows, create more contrast with the visual elements that you see. And we're also going to add some warping to this scooter itself and make it have more of a gestural kind of feel, like it's leaping out at you. So here's an example of something we're kind of shooting for. So we're going to take all those elements that we just saw in phase 1, and we're just going to make it pop. So we're not really adding anything new to this. We're just working with the elements that we have. We've already explored the warp feature with regard to type. We're also going to apply it to just a visual element. So some kind of simple fixes. And also, I got to ask you guys a question. Do y'all have the Chalk Duster font on your computers? If not, we'll need to find something that, is suitable. You do? Okay, good. Because I forget. This is a fancy font, and I've been using this file for a while, so maybe the fonts don't show up like they're supposed to. So I just wanted to make sure that we all have what we need before we get started. So does everybody have the file open? No? Okay. Oh, sure, no problem. Okay.
I'm loading mine.
All right, so we're ready to get started. Let's go ahead and warp this scooter. Let's just dive right in and apply some warping to this scooter. Since this is what we're going to be using to align all of our type to in our organized chaos, the scooter itself becomes the framework for the type elements. So we're not using any kind of a grid per se. We're not worried about aligning type in this one because that goes against the message. We want something that just really springs forward and screams excitement and loudness and chaos and all those things. And so we're going to use the scooter itself as the mechanism that we apply the text around. And that way it looks chaotic, but there's actually a lot of order to it by bringing all these elements together. And then this shape in the background, this little starburst, it's just an exciting shape. In it of itself, I'm getting all tongue-tied, is just a shape that we kind of associate with, activity, motion, excitement. And putting this behind everything and laying all these elements on top of it kind of serves as a visual glue to kind of hold those things closer together too.
It just kind of screams, hey, look at me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look how flat it would be without it. It's not bad, but this really adds some pow behind it. Yeah. And so I refer to these kind of elements as visual glue to kind of bring some cohesion back in so it's not too chaotic. Okay, so for the scooter, what do we need to do first? Well, we'll probably do a little bit of tilting and some warping, but this one is just a really obvious question. What do we do when we want to do something to a layer? Select it. There you go. We can select that layer. I promise that I wasn't trying to set anybody up. I'm just starting from real basic. Okay, so we want to select that layer. And then once it's selected, we can start the warping process. And I'm looking for my little warp button. Hang on a second. For some reason, I don't see it.
Is it tool in the tool window?
Well, I thought it was a button up here at the top. Hang on a second. Okay, so I was just had a brain fart, I guess. But I was looking for that little warping button at the top of the window. But I just remembered we're going to use a different kind of warping function, and it's called the Liquify tool. Have y'all ever used this tool before? Okay. Some have, some haven't. We're all going to go through it together today. So let me explain how this works. First of all, you find it by going to Filter and choose Liquify. Now a whole new window is going to open up, and it's going to show you the layer that you have selected, the object that's on that layer. All right. Now the Liquify tool kind of works like a gigantic, well, not really gigantic, it could be really small too, but kind of like the smudge tool function, but pushing pixels. Okay. So we're going to warp this scooter by using a brush size that's really large, and we're going to place the brush over the parts of the bike that we want to warp and bow. All right. Now you can see my brush is really small. Hold on. So you're going to use this tool right here, and in fact it looks like the smudge tool. It's got a finger that's pushing down on a surface, and it's making this little gesture that it's going to push those pixels right out of the way, or push them in whatever direction you scoot them in. All right, and it's going to be determined, the amount of pixels that get manipulated and pushed is going to be determined by your brush size. So over here in the properties window, you can change the size of your brush. Now mine is set at 100 right now, and this brush has a wide range. It doesn't take much to increase the size. Yeah, it'll be bigger than the screen before you know it. So don't boost it all the way up to the top. Just kind of edge it up, and just notice I just went up about 300 pixels, and that's how much bigger it made my brush. So I like to just kind of tap in here until I find that range. And I know how big of a brush I need to get for this because I've done this about a gazillion times.
What size do you have it?
I'm still figuring it out. I'll know it when I see it, though. That's too big. I would say probably around 1,500. If I had to guess. That's about the size. I want it to cover the, what is this called? The axle? No, the axle's down here, isn't it? What's that? The shaft. Thank you. We want it to cover the shaft of the handlebars. And this is one of those principles where less is more. So how you're going to use this is you're going to click or press the mouse button and hold it in as you very gently kind of bow or push the pixels out. Now notice that it's more concentrated in the center. All right, and this can get out of control really fast. So less is more, less is more. So I like the bowing that's going on right here in the middle of that shaft, but notice how it's not bowing so much next to the handlebars or close to the axle. So what we're going to do in that case is we're just going to reduce the size of this brush, maybe down to a 1,300. And then you can, depending on where you place the brush, you can isolate or pinpoint those pixels a little bit better. So if you do it too severely, you can get like ripples and waves in your, like I'm starting to get that now. I can see in this center part of this, it's not pushing the pixels out as far as I just pushed it at the top and the bottom of that. Make this a little bit smaller.
Just a little bit of the numbers can drastically change.
Yes,
the size of that.
it does not take much to really change the size of this brush.
I can't make it work, but I can't make it look like that.
And I'm even going to give it a little bit of a bow down here. So it really looks like it's leaping up into the air. Maybe something like that. Now, once you got it warped the way you want it, just click OK. And now you can come look at it in your main composition. I'm going to tilt mine. I'm going to rotate mine just a little bit more, really exaggerate that diagonal position.
Mine just looks
Yeah,
it's warped, but it looks like it's all beat up.
That's okay.
Looks like mine got ran over by a car.
All right, so we're going to now do the same thing to this type, except we're not going to use the liquify tool. We're just going to use it on the main scooter. We have a warp feature for type that we've already explored, and we're just going to use that again for Scooter Speedway. So this is our big headliner here, and we want to arc this type. I'm also going to distort it a little bit using the free transform property features.
How you do that?
Well, I'm going to show you.
Oh,
So you're just chomping at the bit, aren't you, Chuck? All right, so I'm going to get my type. First, I'm going to select the Scooter Speedway headline type, and then I'm going to choose the type tool. And once I do that, then I'll have access to the warp feature, the type warp feature. And so right now there is no warp set, but I'm going to set one. So I think I want to use the arc feature. That's kind of a good start, but I also want some perspective on that too. So I want, well, let's just look at the other example that I have here. So if you look at how this type is arced, it's arced, but also the perspective has been manipulated as well. So at the end of Speedway, those type elements are much smaller. Deselect that. Sorry. This thing does not cooperate all the time. All right. So at the end of Speedway, you can see those letter forms are reduced in size or scale. And then at the beginning of Scooter, they're much larger, about twice the size. So I manipulated the perspective of that type as well. So let me go back over here to my demo file and go back to putting the warp on there. Let's just see how much of this we can accomplish just through the warp features. So I'm going to go to arc. So that's some pretty good arcing. And I'm going to adjust the bend. I can always come back and change it a little bit. Now, if you adjust the horizontal distortion, that's where you can start to get this appearance of an exaggerated kind of perspective. Kind of puts it in motion. So I'll click OK. That's looking pretty good to me so far. And I'm going to rotate my type. So I'm using the Move tool to do this. I'll rotate it. And I'll go ahead and apply that rotation. And I'm going to try and scale it down a little bit. And we'll rotate it a little bit more. So I'm just really trying to tuck it in there. So that's looking okay. And I'll go ahead and apply those changes as well. And then one more thing that I think I'd like to experiment with, though I do think that I might have to rasterize this type to do that, is distort it just a little bit more through the free transform tools. So what I'll do is I'll just make a copy of this. So I'm going to duplicate this layer so that if I do mess it up or push it to the point of no return, I still have my original version. So I'm going to turn that visibility off of the original version, and I'm going to rasterize this type layer.
What does the rasterize do again?
Turns it into pixels. So now it still looks like type. You can read it like type, but you can no longer select it and edit it as type. All right, so I can't change the font style or anything like that, or even the spelling of anything if I needed to.
It just, oh, it's now pixels.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and I'm just going to play around with some of these options. You guys know I love distort, so I'm going to get to the Distort tool here. And I'll apply that.
What tab was the free transform
Under, if you go to Edit and then go to Transform, and I'm going to try the perspective really quick too and see if I can really exaggerate the perspective of that. So I've done two separate passes with the transformation feature. I did the distort, and then I applied that transformation, and then I went back to Edit, Transform, and Perspective, and just pulled this little corner scaling handle, and that allowed me to kind of fan the bottom part of where it says Scooter here out a little bit more. Okay. All right. And last, I think I'll just put a drop shadow behind this. I'll just go to the Effects feature. I don't want this much distance between my drop shadow and my type elements, so I'm going to bring that in. And I'm going to adjust the angle a little bit too. So I want my drop shadow to be cast going in the lower right direction. And then I'll click OK. So we got through two steps of this next file, and that's actually a pretty good amount of steps to cover for, by just getting into this second file. So we'll wrap this up on Wednesday, and then we're going to talk about harmony. And then after that, we're going to start on our next assignment in this class. So that's it for today. I'll get this video processed and uploaded this afternoon. And hope you guys enjoyed today's demonstration and learned some more new cool stuff. I'll see y'all later.